In October 2021, Mark Zuckerberg renamed his entire company. Facebook became Meta. And he promised the metaverse would reach 1 billion people. 4.5 years later, the flagship product built around that promise is dead. And here's the part that should genuinely worry investors. The company is now spending even more money chasing the next big platform. This is the story of how Meta lost $83 billion, and why it might be about to do it again. Let's start with the number, because it deserves a moment to actually sink in. Reality Labs, the division built to deliver the metaverse, has accumulated over $83 billion in operating losses since 2020. In just the fourth quarter of 2025 alone, the division lost over $6 billion, on less than $1 billion of revenue. That is not a rough patch. That is a business that fundamentally does not work. So how did we get here? Rewind to June 2015. Zuckerberg writes a long internal email, later obtained by journalists and authenticated through court discovery in an FTC antitrust case. In it, he lays out his actual fear. Quote, "We are vulnerable on mobile to Google and Apple because they make major mobile platforms." He wanted, in his words, a stronger strategic position in the next wave of computing. That single sentence explains almost everything that follows. Facebook built its empire on the open web, then watched Apple and Google insert themselves as gatekeepers on mobile. Zuckerberg never recovered from that, and he was determined it would never happen again. So when VR looked like it might be the next computing platform, Zuckerberg didn't just want Meta to participate. He wanted to own the entire stack. The hardware, with Quest. The operating system, with Horizon OS. The social layer, with Horizon Worlds. The App Store. The whole pipeline, end to end, so nobody could ever sit between Meta and its users again. In October 2021, he announced it publicly. The metaverse would be, quote, the next frontier, reaching 1 billion people and hosting hundreds of billions of dollars in digital commerce. It did not go well, almost immediately. The clearest symbol of the entire disaster arrived within months. Zuckerberg posted a screenshot of his own avatar in Horizon Worlds, standing in front of a digital Eiffel Tower. The internet mocked it instantly for looking flat, lifeless, and worse than a 2010-era video game. And there was a specific, very visible problem. The avatars had no legs. Months later, Meta tried to fix the narrative at its own Connect conference, showing off avatars that finally had legs. There was just one problem. Outlets reported the legs demo wasn't live VR footage at all. It was a pre-recorded animation using conventional motion capture, not anything actually running inside the metaverse. This pattern repeats constantly throughout the metaverse era. Even when Meta tried to show progress, the progress itself turned out to be partly fake. That is an unusually bad sign for a $100 billion bet. But okay, awkward marketing happens. Let's talk about whether anyone actually used the thing. Internal documents leaked to the Wall Street Journal showed Horizon Worlds falling below 200,000 monthly active users. Most people who tried it did not come back after the first month. And 91% of all the world's users built inside it had never been visited by more than 50 people. After 2023, Meta simply stopped publishing user numbers at all. One YouTuber who spent an entire week inside the platform reported finding only around 900 active users at any given moment, across the whole product. For comparison, Roblox, the platform Meta was supposedly trying to beat, has well over 150 million daily active users. Not monthly. Daily. Without ever asking a single person to strap a headset to their face. That comparison is the whole story in one sentence. Meta spent tens of billions of dollars building a worse version of something a free browser game was already doing better, for free, with zero hardware required. Zuckerberg, to his credit, didn't pretend everything was fine forever. On a 2023 earnings call, his confidence had visibly cracked. Quote, "I can't guarantee you that I'm going to be right about this bet. I do think that this is the direction the world is going in." By the third quarter of 2024 earnings call, something quietly changed. Executives didn't use the word metaverse even once during the entire call. nobody announced the pivot. The word just disappeared. In January 2026, the cuts became concrete. Meta laid off 1,500 Reality Labs employees, roughly 10% of the entire division, and shut down 3 VR game studios outright. And then, finally, the formal end. On March 18, 2026, Meta confirmed Horizon Worlds would be pulled from Quest headsets entirely, with full removal completed by June 15. The announcement didn't come from a keynote or an investor call. It showed up quietly in a support documentation page. Compare that to the launch. The Metaverse was unveiled with a full company rebrand and a primetime keynote. It was buried with a documentation update nobody was watching. That contrast says everything about how this ended. So here's where it gets genuinely interesting, and where most retellings of this story stop too early. Zuckerberg looked at the wreckage of an $83 billion failure, and you'd expect him to come away cautious. He didn't. He came away with a different lesson entirely. Not that the instinct to own an entire computing platform end-to-end was the mistake. Just that he'd picked the wrong platform. So he went looking for the next one. He found large language models. Meta released its first Llama model in February 2023, a few months after ChatGPT's launch had already taken the world by surprise. The approach was almost identical to the VR playbook. Identify the platform. Try to own it before anyone else can. This time the strategy was different on the surface. Instead of building a closed ecosystem, Meta gave Llama away for free, open source, hoping to become what one analyst called the Android of AI. The models have been downloaded over 1.2 billion times. Here's the catch nobody talks about enough. 1.2 billion downloads, and Meta captures close to zero direct revenue from that entire ecosystem. Being the Android of something only works if you also own the equivalent of the App Store and the ad network sitting on top, the way Google actually does. Meta has the downloads. It does not have the business model underneath them. And now Meta has announced its own proprietary, closed model, called Muse Spark, alongside record AI infrastructure spending. The company is now guiding toward AI capital spending of up to $135 billion for 2026 alone. That is more than it lost on the entire metaverse across 6 years, committed in a single year, on the next bet. Now, to be fair, Meta can afford to take this swing. Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp generated $83 billion in profit in 2025 alone. The core advertising business is genuinely a money machine, and it's what bankrolled the entire metaverse experiment without ever threatening the company's survival. But affording a mistake and learning from a mistake are two completely different things. And the actual pattern here is worth naming clearly, because it's not really about VR or AI at all. Step 1. Identify a new computing platform that might someday replace the current one. Step 2. Pour tens of billions of dollars into owning it completely before anyone else can. Step 3. When it doesn't work, don't question the underlying strategy. Just go find the next platform and run the exact same play. That is what should actually worry anyone watching the AI capital spending race right now. Meta's $83 billion metaverse lesson wasn't that owning a platform end-to-end is a bad idea. It was specifically that VR was the wrong platform to try it on. Nobody at the top ever stopped to ask the harder question. If you're building anything right now, the takeaway isn't really about Meta specifically. It's about the difference between learning a lesson and learning the convenient version of a lesson. One actually changes your decisions next time. The other just changes which platform you make the same mistake on. Meta is currently betting more money on AI in a single year than it lost on the metaverse across 6. Whether that's conviction or whether it's the exact same neurosis wearing a new outfit, we'll know in a few years. History suggests you should already have a guess. That's the real story behind the metaverse's quiet death and the AI spending spree that followed it. Subscribe for more of these breakdowns. See you in the next one.